Welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right. Whatever. Here we go.
What? Okay, but hold on.
I didn't mean that. I don't know why I said that. I don't know what
All
I
right.
said. I was
Well,
trying to think something smart to say, like clever, because it's been a day, but then I said something sarcastic and stupid, so...
I don't really care about your day today. I care about your weekend this past weekend. I need to know what happened, how it all happened. You have a story, and I need to hear it right now.
Okay. Your transitions are brilliant, by the way. Thank you for saving me yet again. Okay, so we talked about last week, mentioned, I think, that I was going up to see my friends in Massachusetts, and my friends are friends with Karen Allen. And I had the privilege of meeting her in early April last year. She's so nice. And she had mentioned at that point in April that she was doing a play with Birney. Well, I puffed up and teared up, and I was like, love him, man. I'm his number one fan. No, I didn't say that. And she went on to say, yeah, they were going to do it this summer. And it worked out that there's this big pumpkin festival up there where they do like a botanical gardens with like 2,000 pumpkins that are carved. Wow. And so I'm a huge pumpkin carver fan, and I'm a huge Halloween fan.
Well, you're a huge Halloween fan, period.
Yeah,
so,
I am. Yeah, I am. Look. Oh, no. Look, my witch in the back. You see her?
Nice.
Okay, yeah. There's a long story to that, but that's besides the point. Anyway, 'tis the season. And so it kind of blended together where Karen Allen, Birney, Pumpkin Festival, free trip, let's go. So I went, and the first night that I was there was the pumpkin carving place, and it was spectacular. And then the second night was this world premiere of a Donald Margulies play, and Donald Margulies is a playwright that won the Pulitzer for a play called Dinner with Friends, which I love that play. I've never done the full play, but I've done scenes over the years, and I really like that play. And I think it's Andy McDowell, Tony Collette, Greg Kinnear, and oh gosh, his name just went out of my head. I can't think. Anyway, as soon as you say it, I'm going to know it. Oh shoot. Anyway, I had it all prepared for their names, and
Dennis Quaid.
Huh?
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis. I was going to say Randy, but I knew it wasn't Randy. So anyway, so the movie's interesting, and I love that play, and I thought, wow, this is a world premiere. I've never seen a world premiere. So when they finally print the script, it's going to say world premiere at Shakespeare Festival in Berkshire's, blah, 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 Karen Allen, Birney. So we see the play. It's about an hour and a half, and it was so crazy and so amazing to watch. They were less than 20 feet away from me, both of them, the whole entire time. The stage was in the round. Well, the stage was audience on the side and in front, but the stage rotated.
Wow.
To a degree, it rotated some and didn't rotate all the way around. Anyway, the play was called Lunar Eclipse, and it was about two aging people, Karen Allen and Birney, George and M, which they're never called that in the play, but they identified that somehow in reviews. I'm not sure how that worked. Maybe there was like some kind of publicity package. That's probably what it was. Excuse me. And so it's crazy. So the lights go down, and it's a tiny theater. It's about 175 people, if that many. And I see Birney come out, and he takes stage, and he sits in a lawn chair, and the lights come up, and I'm not kidding you, Josh. Sorry. It was so powerful because he was in a Captain Phillips moment at the beginning of the play.
Oh, wow.
I know. Full-fledged, open-mouth scream, silently cry, like Al Pacino in Godfather Part 3. It was so intense. And I just was like, oh, no, I thought I was ready for this, but I was not ready for that. And he was right there from the beginning. I think it's meant to be jarring because that's like a fourth act thing to do.
Yeah.
He went from back there to right there, maybe 20 feet.
He was like checking Twitter and then walking out and then just like, boom.
I don't know what he did to get there. I have no idea. I can't even comprehend it. And then the play starts, and they were both spectacular. And the play, you start to find out that he might have dementia. And I was like, really, is this where we're going with this? Please don't let this be this. Of all things, don't let it be this.
Yeah.
And now that my situation is resolved, I'll let everybody know. I took care of my father for almost 5 years, and he had dementia. So that's what I was doing down in Norfolk when I lived down in Norfolk. And so luckily the play's about a lot of things and not just that. And it was just amazing to watch these two professionals, and you're thinking to yourself, this is why they are who they are, because they can do this on stage. And he was mind-blowing, but she was as mind-blowing, but in a different way. She had more of the reactionary part. Her character later on reveals, she talks about being a happy person and always smiling, and she's just happy all the time. And what's wrong with that, George? I don't think she called him George, but for story purposes. And they start to reveal things about their children and about their life and about his dead dogs, that one had just been buried, and then you notice next to him is this little mound of dirt, and you realize that's the dog's grave. And it takes so many stages for the lunar eclipse to actually happen, I guess, scientifically. And so each stage of the play was a stage of the lunar eclipse, and there was a voiceover for it. Not my favorite thing. I'm not a big voiceover person, especially live on stage. Like, I don't like when people come out at the beginning to say, hey, welcome to the theater and all that other stuff, but they have to because of money and subscriptions and all that other stuff. I get it. But so it wasn't my favorite framing device, but it made sense because it let you know where you were at with this lunar eclipse. And obviously that correlated with the stages of their relationship. So the play was powerful, and standing ovation for ever. And she just beamed with a smile of satisfaction afterwards, and so did he. And then my friends are friends with her, so I know that. And he did the cutest thing. He went to the supermarket and got her flowers, like you do, yeah, it was so sweet. I mean, no, she's famous. So we got a kick out of, like, last year when I met her, I actually saw his daughter in a play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's right.
And my friend's daughter. And, well, they identify as them, they, so his child. And we brought flowers to Ro. That's his child's name. And it kind of felt like the same thing. Like we were going to like a high school production. And the long and the short of it is that Karen Allen came out and she beamed with joy when she saw my buddy Terry and his wife. And she was just giddy with pride. And you could tell she felt satisfied with her performance. Well, right before that happened, and I'm going to try to make this as short as I possibly can. Right before that happened, Reed Birney came out. And I was like, hey, Terry, Reed Birney. And he's walking this way, and then all of a sudden turned and starts walking towards me. Not walking towards me, but walking towards my direction. And I was like, oh, no. And he walked right in front of me, and I just lightly grabbed his elbow, just lightly. And I said, hey, the show was amazing. You were amazing. And he turned and he did that very professional decorum. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming and all that. And I said, there are times in your life where you wish you had the words to tell somebody like you what your work has meant to somebody like me. And he was like, oh, thank you. And I said, and in particular, Mass. And he stopped. And he turned and he just engaged. And I was telling my friend Tom on the phone on the way home, and my friend Tom goes, you were friends with Reed Birney for 10 minutes. And I was like, yep. And he just was as nice as you could possibly be and as engaging as you possibly can be. And he said some really interesting things to me. He said, he first said that he was in the hospital a year or so ago after having a heart attack, which I didn't know that. And I feel a little bit bad because I didn't give him my sympathy at the time, but I was just trying to take it all in. And he said, and when I was reevaluating my life, I had the thought, at least I've done Mass. At least that's out there. And I said, whoa. And he said, he brought it up, not me. He said, I just, I told him about, by the way, it's Franz Kranz, not Franz Kranz. I asked him about that. And he was like, yeah, it's Franz Kranz. Why? Did you think it was Franz Kranz? I said, I was not sure. He goes, you and a lot of other people. And I said, I tweeted out about Martha Plimpton's performance. And then he tweeted back, all 4 of them deserve nominations. And I said, yeah, I just can't take it all in right now and put it all back out. I got to take them one at a time. And Reed Birney said, I think it's going to take a while, and it might take a good 10 years, but I believe that Martha Plimpton's performance in Mass will be considered one of the best performances on film forever, at all, all filmed together. And I was like, okay, I don't traditionally just throw out the podcast to people, but I thought, I think I said the exact same thing on the podcast that I have. And I explained to him about the podcast, and he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And I think all of you are Oscar nominatable. And he said, I don't think I had an Oscar nominatable moment. And that struck me interesting because I thought, wow, people at his level think that way.
Think that, yeah.
And I said,
well, they do. But at the same time, like, they still put in the work. They still, do their performances. But then either it's a, I could actually elevate this to this, or I don't really have any in this movie, but I still want to do it, or whatever. But yeah.
You think? Yeah, I don't think people think that way.
I think it depends. I mean, I don't know if The Rock thinks that way, but I think that maybe
watch him 2 years from now get an Oscar nomination.
That's right. But
he's very good in that movie Southland Tales, by the way. That second.
Richard Kelly's movie.
Yeah, he's good in that.
That movie's a mess, but yeah,
that movie's a mess, but
fine.
I still got it. And so Oscar nomination. Thoughts, understandable. Oscar nominatable moment, because we talk about that all the time. Yeah. It didn't have that over the top Oscar nominatable moment, but that was good because these kind of things, Paul Mescal, I keep bringing him up, but he's a prime example of what we're talking about. And I said, yes, you did. And he looked at me and I said, and I explained, and here I am doing exactly what in my mind's eye I think I want to do and wish I could do when I'm speaking to somebody like Reed Birney, but I'm actually doing it. And he's actually receiving it. And he's actually taking it in. And he's actually giving me thoughts back on it. And I said, I agree with you with the missed nominations, and I agree with you on Martha Plimpton, but I also think that Mass in general will someday, people will be like, oh, what, how did that get forgotten? It will be on the Miss Oscar nomination list. I said it goes all the way back to Samuel Jackson and Jungle Fever for me, even further back. I have a whole thing about Miss Oscar nominations. And he is eye to eye listening to me like we're friends. And I never thought about that when I was talking to him because, how do you? And then Karen came out, and she's super sweet. And she's saying hello to my friends and blah, blah, blah. And there was a moment where it's just us. And we kind of looked at each other. And she said, so, Paul, what?
Oh, she knows your name.
I mean, she had to be kind of reintroduced to me, but then she put it together.
Yeah.
Which is fine by me. I don't care. And she said, so what'd you think? And I said, well, if I did know you and I knew I was just going to walk past you as you were coming out and I could just say whatever I wanted to say, I would have leaned in and gone, you're a natural. And she laughed and I laughed. And I said, it was spectacular. You were spectacular. And she was super sweet. And then all of a sudden, here we are talking to Reed Birney again. He's right there. I mean, there's not a big group of people there.
Yeah.
And he makes some kind of joke about being something vice president, like a hardcore something. And I was like, that's my buddy Reed Birney you're talking about there. Be careful now. And he goes, well, I said, wimpy vice president? He goes, yeah, wimpy vice president, because of his role on House of Cards.
House of Cards.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, yep, I accept that. And then my buddy goes, hey, do you want to get a picture with Reed Birney? I said, only if you can set it up. At this point, I don't want to ask him or bother him at all. And he said, sure, I'll ask him. And then he was like, yeah, sure. And my buddy is so funny. He goes, so yeah, let's not take it in front of the restroom sign pointing that way because it's right between your two heads. And I was like, oh, good. So we turn And my buddy Terry goes, I don't really like the lighting. Click. Well, click. And he goes, I think the lighting's better over here. And then Birney goes, okay, puts his arm around my shoulder and moves me into position. And I said, look, Terry, Birney's directing me. And he laughed and I laughed. And he was super nice and super just down to earth. So, that's my 16-minute story of seeing lunar eclipse up in the Berkshires with Karen Allen and Birney. It is so interesting to me to see people who are at that level, that close, and that in such an intimate space, and seeing a brand new play I don't know anything about, and you watch it and you go, that's why they're working actors. That right there is why. Now, one might want to pick apart the play and analyze the play, and I had my thoughts on the play, and a lot of the reviewers, they all pretty much loved them, but some of them had some trouble with some of the play. And I mean, you could go back and forth and pick it apart, but I can't do that because the experience was much more layered than just, seeing a play and analyzing a play. I might have different thoughts on it if I didn't have that
those
experience.
interactions.
Well, not just that experience in general, but so that's 1/4 of the Mask cast. And so read Birney down.
Now you gotta corner Martha Plimpton in a Ralph's grocery store or something. Okay, don't do that.
I wouldn't do that, but if I ever did, I'm not sure I could really put a sentence together, because what I decided to do for this podcast was watch a Karen Allen movie and was going to watch a Birney movie. And I started to think, well, maybe I'll watch Mass again. And I watched the trailer and I was like, nope, I cannot do that right now. I just cannot do it. So yeah, it was powerful. It was emotional. And it's just nice to know that people, I said to Birney. I said to him, so what's the process here? I said, is this going to go on to Broadway? And he said, well, I'm not sure about that. And I said, well, how do we make that a certainty? And he was like, well, it's complicated and blah, blah, blah. I said, let's get it to Broadway and get you your second Tony. And he looked at me and I was like, if you haven't picked up, I'm a fan. I didn't say that, but if you haven't picked up on it, I know your work and I know you have a Tony. And let's put it this way, and I'll end it with this. They both gave Tony caliber performances. That's how powerful it was. So there it is.
That's great. Wow. Oh my gosh. That's so cool. I'm glad you got a chance to actually interact with them on top of seeing them actually, perform right in front of you. So, because you're right, you've seen them, each of them, in multiple movies and all that stuff, but theater's kind of a different animal, and whatever you saw that night is not going to be what the people the next night saw. So that's the cool part about theater. Even though we have a film podcast, that's the part that just kind of like enamors me with theater. So
yeah, I saw theater with a major movie star and a completely unbelievably working actor. I don't think most people would know Birney, and you couldn't say, hey, what about this film per se, but like my buddy Terry's like, I don't know if I know his resume. And then he looked and he was like, oh, I know that movie. Oh, I know that movie. Oh yeah, I remember from that. Oh yeah, House of... And it just starts to click. So it is kind of movie podcast adjacent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's get movie podcast direct, because we're going to talk about some movies that each of us have seen over the last month that we haven't been doing our podcasts. So for me, Alamo has been doing a thing where they have been playing every single Stanley Kubrick movie that he ever made, back to Fear and Desire, which I haven't been able to go to like half of them. Like Full Metal Jacket was playing while I was out of the country and stuff like that. But I was able to see some of my favorite Kubrick movies. The first one I saw was Dr. Strangelove, which was an experience for me. I was really excited to see it in the theater. But the crazy part about that was that I felt like that everybody in the theater, which it was packed. I mean, there was a lot of people there, but it seemed like there were a lot of people in the theater that were like trying. I felt like they were being performative as far as like laughing at things, and maybe that's just like my internal whatever. But that movie is it's such a funny movie, but it's a black comedy. It's very dark, and there's not, for me at least, there's not a lot of lines in that movie that are laugh out loud lines, but people were really trying hard to like laugh out loud in the theater. And so that's the part that was just kind of like, yeah, we all get it. Like, we know it's a great movie. Like, you don't have to like prove to me that you know that this is funny. I don't know. So that was me putting my thing on other people. But so I kind of wished I just had the whole movie theater to myself. That I could
do
just
every
watch
time I
it,
go to the movie theater. I think
watch
that.
it and not have to deal with all the other people. But that
One
was
day.
the only one that was the only one of the Kubrick movie. I mean, really, it's the only, straight up comedy that Kubrick's made that I saw in the theater. Although I did see Lolita in the theater, and that was the big thing that struck me in that movie, is that it's been a little while since I've seen it, but like I didn't realize how funny Lolita was, and it's not even necessarily the scenes with Claire Quilty, the Peter Sellers character. It's not necessarily just those scenes. Like, there's other scenes. There's slapstick comedy in there. There's a scene where a guy from the hotel comes in and tries to set up a bed, and they have this huge, weird, awkward interaction with James Mason and this guy. And there's all kinds of different elements to that movie that are a lot funnier than I remembered. But it's still a complex movie, and there's a lot going on in that movie. And I know that the marketing for that movie when it came out was like, how did anyone make a movie of the book Lolita? And it's like that Kubrick definitely, he really kind of threads the needle on that one, I think. And even though Vladimir Nabokov, the writer of the book, is credited as a screenplay writer, like, he's definitely kind of said that like Kubrick did his own thing with the script once Nabokov, handed in his first draft. So it's definitely, it's somewhat a lot of the beginnings of Kubrick tinkering. But the other movies that I saw in the theater were Clockwork Orange and The Shining. And once again, I've never seen either one of those in the theater before. And the big things that I took away from both of those was the score, like on both of them. And on both of them, it was Wendy Carlos. I think she had someone that she worked with on The Shining, but really it's so powerful. The score on both of those movies is just so in your face in the theater. And that's something that I had been missing. Even when watching at home, I've got surround sound, I've got a good TV, I've got all that stuff, but it's not as enveloping as being in front of you, huge and loud and in your face. You can't get away from it. And there's some just crazy scenes in The Shining, just so dread filled and fear, fear-filled scenes in The Shining. Just even looking at when Wendy is her name, I think, is when Wendy's going through his manuscript and just seeing those huge pages of all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and the score kind of like building behind that. I mean, like, it is so scary. That movie, it just has such a feeling to it. So, and you get that, in spades when you're watching it in the theater. So it's awesome. I was kind of bowled over by each of my experiences in the theater, and I wish I was able to see more of them. I was supposed to see, I had tickets to Eyes Wide Shut, but we had my wife had a dinner meeting that I had to go to with her. And so we ended up, it was like a prospective candidate. And so we ended up talking with the prospective candidate and her husband and I started talking about movies. And so like by the end of the dinner, I was like, oh yeah, well, I did miss Eyes Wide Shut to come to this meeting. He was like, oh, you should have totally gone to that. So I was like, okay. But yeah, no, he's a cool guy. But yeah, so that's a few of the things that I've seen in the theater, since we've talked last, really. So
All
How
right,
about
so
you?
I have some. Well, I've seen nothing, to be honest with you. I've seen one thing since past lives, and other than a few other things I'm watching, I just did a play, so my mind is not on going to or to movies at all. That's why I texted you earlier and said what I said. I was like, oh, I'm
Mm.
kind of in the middle of something. I don't really have
Yep.
much to offer. And so, other than my life experience that I've been going through, but I have a couple questions. So, you had never seen any of those Kubrick films on the
Well,
big screen?
the only Kubrick movie I'd ever seen in the theater was famously Eyes Wide Shut in 1999. I took my girlfriend and we
Right,
were
I
both
remember
18 years old.
I remember
So
you telling me about that.
that was a bit awkward.
I can't even imagine. I
But
bet you she still talks about that.
uh, probably
Yeah. Had you been dating a while?
not really. And we didn't last that long. I mean, it was like a 8-month type thing. But yeah.
I would love to be a fly on the wall to hear her talking about her experience with you and like
Yeah, I think
what.
she checked out pretty early.
Yeah,
She was like,
yeah.
"Oh, look, it's Nicole
He
Kidman,"
was-
and then it was like,
he
"Wait,
was
this is weird."
Super cute guy, and we kind of not really get. Well, we were okay, and then he took me to this movie. Have you heard
Yeah.
about it? Eyes Wide
It
Shut.
wasn't a good move on my part,
Well, I mean,
But
but on some level, if she was all about it, who knows? Life might be
well,
different.
actually, it was probably 3 months later. No, 2 months later. I met Steph. So, yeah,
Well,
there you go.
everything's meant to
Yeah,
be.
that's right. But
so
so that's the only movie that I had the ability to see in the theater because there wasn't a lot of repertory stuff around me in college or anything like that. So really, the fact that Alamo's bringing back these movies and a lot of them have gotten 4K transfers, like all the ones that I saw, except for Lolita, I think. I don't know if Lolita's gotten a 4K transfer. It looked good, but yeah, they've all been remastered essentially, so they're available to.
So when
show.
you finally got to see it on the big screen, obviously it's a different experience, and obviously you were describing about the score and stuff like that. But were there things you noticed that you didn't notice after watching them? I mean, how many times would you say you've seen Doctor Strangelove? Just approximately.
Ooh, 20?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I was thinking a half a dozen.
No.
Wow, I'm impressed. Wow. How many times have you seen The Shining?
Maybe like 10 or 12.
How many times have you seen Eyes Wide Shut?
Oh, maybe like 4.
I feel so much better about that answer. Because if you had said 23, I would have been like,
No.
I think Steph needs to give that old girlfriend a call. No, I'm kidding. So when you're watching it, see, I was a big fan of The Big Chill. And I had never seen it on the big screen, although I had a chance to back in the day, but I just didn't for whatever reason. Then it came to the Narrow, which is the Dollar Theater, whatever you want to call it. And I don't even know what it's called. Second run? I don't know. No, it wouldn't be a second run because that's after like the Oscars and stuff. Anyway, what?
It's probably a repertory theater. I mean, like it's what it
Why
sounds
is it
like.
called that? Why is it called
Oh,
that?
it's just like a theater that plays things that are that have already been out, but they, like the New Beverly in Los Angeles that Quentin Tarantino owns. They pretty much only play older movies, and they'll put together different shows, different pairings, double features or different showings, theme based things. That's,
I just have never heard that term repertory theater
okay.
for a movie theater before. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I've just never heard it. So that's interesting. So it's a double meaning. Well, not a double meaning. It has more than one meaning. Anyway, so
could be wrong.
when what?
I said I could be wrong.
You could be wrong
That's correct. Yeah.
about repertory.
Movie based, yeah, movie repertory system is also found at base. I'm just reading stuff, so
Okay.
yeah, it looks like it's mainly theater, but I'll have to look at it in the context of movie theaters. So yeah,
I was just surrounded by a Tony Award winner and one of the most famous ingenues in our world. So yeah, it's just, take it from me. I'm just teasing. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. That kind of stuff can get me in trouble. Anyway, so when I saw The Big Chill in the movie theater, I was like, whoa. I had some of the scenes were cut when they presented it on TV, like the sides were cut. I didn't even know Meg Tilly was in this one scene. So that was mind blowing, but just the way it engulfed me and the way it just, you can't, like you said, you can't get away from it. I can't imagine what it's like to have seen A Clockwork Orange. How many times have you seen that movie?
Yeah, maybe like 10.
Are you fibbing?
No.
Is it really
I've seen
27 times?
No,
Is that like,
no.
okay.
I mean, I got the 4K Blu-ray when it came out last year. I watched it then, and then I watched it now. So I mean, I've probably seen it, and then I did a rewatch maybe 4 years ago. So I probably saw it 3 or 4 times when I was in high school, college. So
what was that like to see on the big screen? That must have been just mind melting.
Yeah, I think that. So once again, with the score and with that using a lot of classical music, Thieving Magpie, all those scenes are essentially tied to pieces of music. I think that it got me at least into the kind of especially the scenes where he was being, the Ludovico technique. Those scenes were just there's flash frames in there and there's all kinds of stuff that it just it overtakes your senses a lot more readily than watching it on a TV that's much smaller than what you see in a movie theater. And then the other things that I noticed were even the other scene that was really powerful was when they were testing him after he'd gone through the Ludovico technique, and they had the guy come out and just shove him down and make him lick his boot and all that stuff. That stuff was just the score was huge at that point, and it was really oppressive. The movie was very oppressive. And then the last thing that I noticed was just the overacting that I can't remember what the actor's name is, but the injured writer you see him at the beginning, and then obviously you see him at the end when Malcolm McDowell gets back to his house, and he kind of takes him in, and once he realizes who he is, his whole demeanor, he just overact. To me, it seems like overacting. Now I know it was obviously a choice, and I know that Kubrick is known for George C. Scott and Doctor Strangelove. I mean, there's been scenes where he pushes his actors. It's The Shining, Jack Nicholson, The Shining, he, just reading about that production, where he'd be okay, you do a few takes and then you just kind of burn through the first few because they're not going to be used, and then you get through a few more, and then you get to a certain point where you're exacerbated, and that's the point where Kubrick really engages, and when you've got Jack Nicholson throwing his hands in the air while he's walking down the hallway to the gold room. I mean, he's just being extreme, but that fits in that movie, in that scene at that time for me. Whereas the performance of that old gentleman, the injured guy, it just seems too extreme in a movie that is obviously already extreme, but it just doesn't seem like it fits. And I felt that a lot more in the theater. So that was one thing that I pulled. Oh wait, Patrick McGee is the character's name, or the actor's name.
It's interesting because I've only seen that movie twice. Okay. And you got me to rewatch it, actually. Maybe not you in particular, but I was yeah, I don't ever want to experience that movie again. And talking to you, I was okay, I'm a grown up now, and I'll try it again. It was with the last 30 years of the love of film under my belt, I was looking at it in a different way. I can separate on some level my visceral reaction to it and the way that the world pulls me in and makes me feel certain things, and then my analytical movie-going mind or my film love mind. And so I could kind of separate. I was thinking about that guy, and I thought to myself, here's why I justify what he did. Because I don't know if it's bad reading or just ridiculous line readings. You know what I mean? Is it bad acting, or is it just a choice of the way he chose to do his line readings for that particular scene. But I realized something. That man has not had any tragedy in his life until now. He's very affluent, very well-to-do. He has an upper crust kind of talking blah, 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 martinis and, oh, darling. You know, he's like, that is the blah, blah, blah. He doesn't have any emotional connection to the world on a regular basis because he doesn't have to. He's probably, you know, people take all the obstacles out of his way because he's very well to do, at least seemingly so. And so once he's gone through the emotional strain of what he's gone through, and strain is the least of the heavy words I could use to describe what he's been through. And when he goes to tell him later on what's going on, he doesn't have the emotional center from years of struggle or life's tragedies or life's obstacles. And so he's not had those. So when he's trying to emphasize an emotion, it would be almost fake sounding because he's not had the capabilities of doing it before. So now the emotion's coming through him, but he doesn't know how to speak that out. He doesn't know how to say it out loud. It's like taking somebody who went to Cambridge and then went to Oxford and then went to Harvard and then went to, you know, Princeton, whatever schools, and they've never had to talk outside the world of scholars and the world of education. And then all of a sudden they have to go work at McDonald's. They wouldn't have the dialect to speak, I'm going to use the word normal, but average, everyday. It would be a heightened sounding quarter pounder with cheese. It wouldn't just be like, okay, you want the number 3? Okay, cool. No problem. Have a good day. It wouldn't be that. This person wouldn't know how to speak that way. So they would have to figure it out. So if you were hearing them say, you want the number 3 with extra mayonnaise, blah, 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 it would sound strange to our ear because they don't have the ability to adjust to that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't think that guy, I don't disagree with you.
For me, at least, the biggest problem is that, like, I understand like where the character is in that moment. He's trying to hold in all of his rage, and he's trying to be presentable to this person who essentially caused his wife's death. Like, he didn't physically murder her because he says that like she died like later, a couple days later in the hospital, but still he caused her death, and he just absolutely just terrorized her,
raped her in front of him,
raped her, and all of them, and all of that. I mean, it's horrible. And he injured him to the point where, I mean, I don't think he was was he in a wheelchair initially? I don't know if he was or not.
No,
but
I don't think so.
Yeah, he wasn't in a wheelchair, but he's obviously in a wheelchair now. So that whole thing, it just was, I mean, the emotions that he must be feeling, but it just seemed like it didn't seem natural. I mean, I don't know. I hate to say that because, like, I don't know how you could be natural in that situation. And maybe that's what Kubrick was going for. It's like, there is no natural in that situation. But to me, it took me out of it. So that's all I can say. So,
well, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, I hate saying, bad things about a movie that I think is a valuable film experience. But
an observation that you have about a part of a film that you love is not bad things. It's an observation about how you felt about it. It's okay. It's not like you have any say over whether or not anybody else is going, don't watch that movie because that rich man's bad acting. I mean, it's like you have no control over anybody else. You're expressing how you felt about it. And actually, the way you did it makes sense. You articulated it in a good way, so I wouldn't feel bad about that.
Well, one of the other things I saw in theater was a double feature. Nia DaCosta. So I guess they're doing these like double features at Alamo, where they are curated by a director, a contemporary director, and this one was Nia DaCosta, who's the director of the new The Marvels movie, with all the different Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau and all that. So that's coming out next month. But she paired these two movies, which was an interesting pairing, which is Brazil which I'd never seen before and is one of my favorite movies of all time.
In the theaters.
And Triangle of Sadness in the theater. And so I was like, all right, so they're playing Brazil first and then Triangle of Sadness second. So I was like, all right, so my sister was in town and so I had 2 tickets. And so I was like, all right, we're going to go see Brazil. So, and I was like, after that, you know, we'll see how we feel and we'll see if we want to watch Triangle of Sadness. I played the trailer for my sister, Sarah, and she was like, okay, interesting. So we got done with Brazil, which was awesome, amazing. Like just the one thing I'll say about Brazil, number one, the transfer was not great. It needs a good 4K film transfer because there was a lot of just bad. It seemed like the compositing wasn't very good in certain places, and there was just really, it looked like it was bad film. It looked like they scanned 35 millimeter film that had gone through a bunch of projectors. So that was not cool. I did not enjoy that part. There were certain parts of it that looked a lot better. And actually it made me appreciate even more the use of miniatures and special effects in that movie. That all the scenes of like Sam Lowry flying in the clouds and stuff, like they actually looked really good. And from a standpoint of, it looked like a real person flying in the clouds. It didn't look like CGI because it wasn't, and it didn't look like a miniature, but it was. It was a little motor. They had a little motor in it, and it was like the wings were flapping. And the way they shot it is they shot it, in fast motion, and then they reduced the speed of it to make it look more ethereal and more, kind of flighty. And it works. So they use a lot of miniatures in that, and they use a good amount of compositing, but there's a lot of practical effects in that movie, and it's great. Like it works. That's a way a movie can stay timeless is by using practical effects. So that's what I felt about that movie. And then we watched Triangle of Sadness, which I've seen. This is like the 3rd time I've seen it now. Yeah. Well,
Why?
we did a podcast on it.
So that's once.
Oh man, we had a really good discussion afterwards. My sister and I had a really good discussion afterwards.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was really cool. I mean, the scenes in the boat when it's going bad. I mean, it's a bit rough, but yeah, that I don't have to see again. But there's a lot of other good stuff in that movie, and I really appreciated each part of that movie, because it's kind of like 3 separate sections, and I really felt like solidified my opinion that you need each of those parts for the movie to work. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So speaking of practical effects, Monday night I saw The Thing in the theater too.
Interesting.
The 1982 Carpenter movie, and it was really good too. Amazing practical effects. They look beautiful. It is terrifying, of course, and I'll go back to the score. It's an Ennio Morricone score.
Wow.
So that John Carpenter is a huge fan of somebody when he decides not to write the score for a movie and he brings in Ennio Morricone to do it. Because, I mean, this is the guy who wrote Halloween. Like, he could probably have handled writing the score for his movie, The Thing. But instead, he goes to Ennio Morricone as like, hey, I need you to mess around with some synths and make this super creepy. And of course, it was super creepy. And there's a lot of jump scares in that movie. And it's a great movie. I mean, it's a good psychological horror movie, and like emphasis on the horror, but also emphasis on the psychology. So yeah, it's cool.
Well, that's an interesting transition, because the only film that I was able to see when I got a chance to actually sit down and like be a human being again was I was like, okay, I want to see another Karen Allen film. I almost say Carpenter. Karen Allen film. I want to see something that has been pulling at me to see again. And I was like, well, I just watched all the Indiana Jones. So what do I watch? And I've seen her film Colwell, that was 2022 22 or 21 where she was nominated for the Independent Spirit Award. And I was like, what do I want to see? And for whatever reason, I've been wanting to see Starman again. And I've seen it a couple times. And I saw it in the theater when it was originally out. And
I wouldn't know.
And you know, I earned it.
I think I was out of diapers.
I'm just going to let the world live in your silence for a split second. I think it was in diapers. So anyway, so I watched Starman again. And speaking of special effects, some of the beginning of the film is, it's a little dated. And some of the special effects you have to like just accept for what they are. And what I wanted to ask you about that is that now, obviously, you were just out of diapers, so you don't have a practical firsthand experience of something like this. But my question is, when we see something back in 1980 something, and it's these, well, it wasn't green screen, right? What did they do if they wanted a spacecraft to fly through? It was a picture on a picture, right?
So they do optical compositing. So what they'll do, and they started this Star Wars and maybe a little bit before that, but they would shoot something with a blue screen behind it, and then it was mostly blue screens behind it. They would shoot something with a blue screen behind it, and then they would shoot a plate, like a thing that's just blank, well, whatever it was, whether it's space or whatever it is, and then they would essentially cut out the part that isn't the part that where the spaceship is going to be, and then they kind of overlay the spaceship onto it. It's so much easier nowadays, but still, they were able to kind of do that and make it look like they were and then they would expose a piece of film with both of those things kind of stacked on top of the other, and then
is that why there's a little black line going around all of that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a scene where they're in the car and they're supposed to be in the woods, and I think that probably for technical reasons they had to shoot it that way. So it takes a few seconds to adjust. But there is, I don't know if you've ever seen Starman, but it's worth checking out for a lot of different reasons. But there is, when the spacecraft, Jeff Bridges is obviously an alien from another planet, and we send out a satellite that says, "Welcome, greetings from every person on Earth. Come visit us." And somebody takes us up on it. It happens to be this star, this planet, and this entity who becomes Jeff Bridges' character. It's kind of hard. You don't want to know too much about because it's interesting what they choose to do. And but when the spacecraft hits the forest that it lands in, to indicate that it's off its course and it's sort of a crash landing, I don't know how they did it, but they blew up a nice tract of land. And because it's all, because they didn't have CGI, they didn't have any of that. So that's all explosions. That's all. I don't know if it's miniatures or not, but I
would think so. That's how they did a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Miniatures. Well, it's well done, because I was like, wow, they just burned that whole forest. How did they get permission to do that? But now it makes sense. And that scene has to be used later on. And I noticed that the section, and I watched very carefully how the camera moved, and it never moved any further past a certain part of the section. And either way. So obviously it was just that section that was meant to look burnt. So what were you going to say?
Oh, I was even in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, shoot, Lord of the Rings used and Matrix used. They didn't call them they call them bigatures. So because they're huge, it'd be like 20 feet tall, but it's supposed to be something that's like whatever 100 feet tall or 200 feet tall, or like in Independence Day when they blew up the White House. I mean, that was probably, I don't know, it was like a 10-foot tall White House, so it was huge. So when they blew it up, like little pieces of wood flew all over the place, and it looked real, even though it was, it was small. It wasn't, this big. It wasn't, 5 inches tall, but it all at the same time, it also wasn't 50 feet tall. It was kind of in between. It wasn't
somewhere. A real building. Well, actually, I guess it could be at 10 feet. So some of the special effects in the beginning are a little like takes you a few seconds, but then you're over that very quickly. It's an enormously impressive performance by Karen Allen. I actually have come to think it's probably her best performance on film. And I kind of thought that before, but have never really put that together. And it's Jeff Bridges' second Oscar nomination. I think it's his second Oscar nomination. I think it's his first Best Actor nomination. And deservedly so. It is such a technically interesting character, and the way, because he comes to be, but he's never been in human form before, so the way he walks, the way he talks, I don't know, the way, the things that he does with and the way he calls her Jenny Hayden, that's her name, Jenny Hayden, and the way that, I missed you, Jenny Hayden, it's so sweet and so endearing, and the moment-to-moment work that he has is impeccable, and she's incredible. And you just forget how beautiful these people are on film. And Jeff Bridges is a stunner. I mean, he's so good looking, but we know him as the dude, not as like the dude.
Which is funny because that was 9 years later. No, it was 13 years later. Yeah.
What year was?
It was 97 and Starman was 84.
So 13, yeah. 13.
But he seems totally, because I was just looking at kind of some pictures of him in that movie, and it's like, he looks so much younger.
Yeah,
but,
don't do drugs, kids. Look what happens.
There you go.
But he's stunningly beautiful, and so is she. And, they say the camera can either do one of two things to you. It can either emphasize everything great about you, or it can really wreck you. And some people are photogenic and some people are just not. It's just the way that it works. And her face is so photogenic, and her emotional being during this film is so intact. You forget about everything else that you might. I mean, there's some illogical things that happen in the narrative that you're like, nowadays that would never happen. And some things you have to give John Carpenter credit for writing it in, because you're like, oh wait, they just hop on a train to go where they're going. Well, how do they know where they're going? They're just hopping on a train. Well, of course, in the 80s, people just hopped on trains, right? And it's actually part of the narrative later on that wasn't probably the best choice that they could have made. So you kind of chuckle at yourself that you're thinking, who hops into the back of a pickup truck with a lady with a baby just to catch a ride? Who does that? Nobody. Okay, nowadays. But of course they do it in the film, and it adds to this incredibly sweet and emotional scene that is just, who cares where they're at? They are where they're at. And I would recommend it just for the mere fact that if you want to watch somebody, and I don't use the word perfect because I don't know what that means, and if it's possible to be perfect at acting, I don't know if that's possible, and I guess you could pick moments apart. But if you want to watch a technically intense, near perfect performance, you have to see Jeff Bridges in Starman, because it is, he has limitations because of the character. He has automatic obstacles, which is good, but he can't do certain things with his face. He can't do certain things with his voice. He can't do physical things because he's not capable of those choices as that character. And what he chooses to do instead, it's just mesmerizingly beautiful. And the last thing I'll say about it is, at the end of that film, you've seen the scene of them with the snow coming down. Have you ever seen that scene with the red and blue? Oh, you haven't? It's usually in all montages. That's why I assumed you had seen it. You just can't look at it and not just see beauty. They both are beautiful people. I've said that enough. But the way that he shoots it, and the lighting that he uses, and this effect that he uses, it's not snow, it's something else, without giving anything away. And there's a shot of her, and you're like, wow, it's just stunning. And it's not just her natural ability to look great on screen or to be a movie star or any of that stuff. It's about what she's doing with her eyes. It's about how she's breathing. It's touching. It's sweet and touching. And I'm glad that's the movie that I chose to see. I'm glad I haven't seen Triangle Sadness. I'm glad that I haven't seen A Clockwork Orange. I cannot deal with any of that right now. Although, side note, I am watching American Horror Story on the side. So it's kind of balancing the act.
Yeah. I can't get into that stuff.
I know. It's my thing. And plus Halloween Wars. I'm all about that too. You ever seen that show?
Halloween Wars? No.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Pumpkin carver, sugar artist, and cake artist come together. They're given themes, and they have to make a piece, a basic live 3-dimensional like shot of a movie, and it's vampires versus werewolves or whatever. What if the werewolf got left at the altar? Those kind of things.
Oh my gosh,
I love it. I love it.
Jeez.
It's so
That's
creative.
cool.
I love everything about it. So yeah.
That's neat. All right. Well, you got anything else? I guess
No.
that's all you saw, huh?
That's it. I mean, I just, when I was thinking about the podcast, I was like, nope. I already talked about that. Did I talk about Blue Beetle? I think so. Nope. Done. And I'm fine with it, actually.
Okay. You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and you'll find us. We'll see you next time.